Welcome back, everyone. This is L. Joy Williams, political strategist, your live host for the TWIB Nation live stage here in Phoenix, Arizona for Netroots Nation 2015. We have had a morning. We've not only had a morning on the live Netroots stage, but here on the TWIB Nation stage, we had some of the activists and organizers who have been involved in the Black Lives Matter movement and continue to press the way and the issue here at Netroots. And so joining me live on stage right now is one of the presidential candidates that we heard from this morning, Governor Martin O'Malley. Thank you so much for coming to the TWIB stage.
El Joy, thank you. Good to be with you.
Now, obviously, in the live town hall this morning, we heard some passionate disruption, which is part of our American democracy. It is why we are here in this country in the first place, is because people disrupted and raised their voices. And particularly, it was focused on the Black Lives Matter movement. And particularly the question of what are you proposing as your policies on reforming criminal justice or changing the system overall. And I understand you didn't get a chance to respond in detail to that. But I want to ask something specifically, because towards the end in your explanation, you said the phrase all lives matter. You said the phrase white lives matter. But I want to ask you, do you understand the difference in responding in that conversation, in that context with all lives matter or white lives matter, when we're specifically talking about Black death that is not all inclusive?
I certainly do. And in fact, I believe what I first said was that Black lives matter before those other two phrases. And when I said those other two phrases, I meant no disrespect to the point, which I understand, and that Black Lives Matter is making. For many years ago, when I ran for mayor of Baltimore, a majority African-American city, when we had allowed ourselves to become the most violent, part of what I called us to as a people was to the justice of realizing that, yes, Black Lives Matter, and when we allow ourselves to assume that every year as a city, we just have to accept that 300 young Black men will die violent deaths, that we have to do a checkup from the neck up and realize as a people that if 300 young, poor white men were dying, we would have a different reaction to this as a state and as a metro area and as a city. So I meant that was a mistake on my part, and I meant no disrespect, and I did not mean to be insensitive in any way or to communicate that I did not understand the tremendous passion, commitment, and feeling and depth of feeling that all of us should be attaching to this issue.
So I want to connect to this, because you and your campaign have said that you're the only candidate of big ideas. I believe you put out your plan on climate change. You put out a plan on Wall Street reform, immigration reform, and having a college debt-free nation. And connected to that, we have not yet heard or not yet seen of complete your plan on criminal justice reform. But I want to hear more from you on that, because connected to the Black Lives Matter movement is a real reform of this institution that continues to perpetuate racist policies and discriminatory policies.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm only 40 days old as a presidential candidate, and thank you for noticing the 4 very detail-oriented policy papers that we rolled out. And I will be and am in the process of developing what I believe will be received as the most progressive criminal justice, racial justice agenda reform effort of any candidate in this race so far. And I'm better prepared to do that because of my experiences, both as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, as a mayor, as a governor. During the end of my term as governor, or by the end of it, we had reduced our incarceration rate to its lowest in a 20-year period of time. I restored voting rights to 52,000 people that had felony convictions. I signed legislation to decriminalize the possession of small amounts of marijuana. I expanded reentry programs in order to drive down our recidivism rate by 15% over an 8-year period of time. These are the actions that we need to take on a much broader and much more impactful scale, along with a total taking a fresh look at the sentencing guidelines at the federal level. I don't understand why we still have a disparity on sentencing on the possession of powder cocaine and crack cocaine. Never made sense to me as a prosecutor, never made sense to me as a defense attorney or as a mayor or as a governor. So these are the things that we need to do. We need to do what works to save lives and to reduce violent crime. And we need to do the things that work to reduce the number of people that we keep behind bars or make unemployable. Things like banning the box, which is also something we did as a state employer. Excuse me.
So I would imagine, and we can say that the things that you've done as governor and as mayor that you're looking to influence and put into policy on a national level being president, and that's the reason why you're running for president. But I want to go back to the question of state violence. What in your mind do you do? What do you as president do regarding law enforcement taking the lives of black civilians?
Oh, I think we have a lot of room for improvement here as a country. I am in favor of accelerating the deployment of body cameras and cameras in cars in order to bring a higher degree of accountability and openness and transparency to policing. There are no three issues quite as painfully intertwined for us as Americans as the issues of violence, race, and public safety in America. And so I also believe that we should require every department to report their police-involved shooting incidents, as well as their discourtesy complaints, as well as their excessive force complaints.
Because there's no federal mandate for that right now.
That's right. There's no federal mandate for it, and so some counties do it well, some cities do it well, some cities don't. And there are certain things that technology allows us to do when you're tracking and measuring things openly and transparently, like identifying what officer has racked up all of a sudden 3 complaints in a short period of time and needs to be taken off the street for retraining, or to ask what's happening at home, what's happened, because this is unacceptable behavior in terms of the effectiveness of policing. It's also very important that we proactively recruit for our police departments so that our police departments and our police officers actually reflect the diversity of the communities that they are hired and sworn to serve. All of these were things that have to be constantly tended to by every mayor in America, every county executive, and every state. That's what I did during my time. But look, let me admit something here. Every day we were trying to better understand the things that actually work and the things that don't serve, the things that we need to do more of, like reentry programs, and the things that are actually counterproductive to the more just and loving community that we're trying to create as a people.
Just last week at the NAACP National Convention, President Bill Clinton, in his remarks to the NAACP delegates, made mention of the mistake he made and wanted to admit to it of signing into law the mandatory sentencing and how that had a effect on communities of color, and made apologies and sort of admitting that. Considering that you were not only mayor of Baltimore, but then went on to be governor, is there anything that you are taking to learn from that you know would not, now in hindsight, now contributed to a further criminalization of a particular community, or something that you want to change on a global, on a national scale as president?
Yeah, I think that in retrospect, we should have put a much higher priority on making it easier for people to expunge misdemeanor records than we did. We picked up some ground and we did some good things towards the end of my 8 years as governor. I wish we had done that earlier. I wish that we had expanded reentry programs earlier than we did. We're weathering the recession at the same time, and as I mentioned before, we did reduce our incarceration rate to the lowest level in 20 years. So we did better than anybody else had for 20 years, but there was still more that we could have done on that. And while I made our city a leader in putting cameras up to safeguard, public areas in our city. I wish that we had been a leader in implementing body cameras before. I wish we had been a leader in doing that earlier rather than later, and I think our state probably could have helped the city to do that, or other jurisdictions that wanted to be leaders in that.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I know that moving on in the campaign, not only are you the candidate of big ideas so far in terms of putting detailed policies out, but as both mayor and governor, you have some pretty progressive credentials in terms of the things that we are fighting for and presenting now nationwide that you actually were able to implement in the city and ultimately the state.
Well, I've been so blessed to have been able to serve the people of Baltimore and the people. One of the big problems we have right now in our country is we're talking past one another. We are speaking, but we're not listening to each other. And I hope that in the course of this national campaign, we can find that place where we can meet and actually recognize one another, hear what each other is saying, understand better where we're all coming from. Because one truth is that we're all going to the same place, and we need to figure out how to make sure that for our kids' sake, it's a much more just and inclusive and prosperous place.
Well, I thank you for joining us on the TWIB stage. I'm sure your time is very calculated, and everybody wants a piece of you at this moment. So I do thank you for taking the time to not only answer those questions. I do hope in overall, as you mentioned, wanting to hear the voices from everyone, that you have voices at the table to hear and influence the policies that you want to enact or champion as a presidential candidate throughout the campaign. And particularly the Black Lives Matter movement is going to be front and center the rest of this 2016 presidential campaign, and I do hope that you hear them and implement those policies and those suggestions into your campaign. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck on the campaign trail, and we look forward to hearing from you more. From the live stage at TWIB Nation live stage here at Netroots 2015 in Phoenix, Arizona. We'll be right back with more guests to hear more about the issues going on, not only in this street, but in your streets. We'll be back soon.